Welcoming three new coaches to the ACC here in 2022. Where do they rank? Welcome to the Voice of College Football as we break down the game we all love each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis because of your contribution. This is a series that we run each and every offseason. We rank the coaches in all the Power 5 conferences. Check out the other videos. Let's tackle the ACC. Three new coaches, you would think that they would rank the bottom three spots in the league. None of them have been head coaches elsewhere. But no, that's not how I approach it. Basically, if I rank an existing coach with tenure, with games under his belt, worse than a new coach, that means that that coach is not doing the job. And there's a few examples of that in the ACC, starting with Georgia Tech's Geoff Collins. He took over for Paul Johnson a few years ago. Much was made of the roster transition and transformation that he would have to undergo to bring it from a triple option attack to a modern day offense. And he has failed miserably at that point, and that doesn't affect the defense. And Georgia Tech's just been flat out a bad football team in 3 years under Geoff Collins. And it was a pretty darn good football program under Paul Johnson. 9-25. 7-18 in the conference in 3 seasons under Geoff Collins. So Geoff Collins has some work to do after a decent stint at Temple at 15-10. He's our 14th ranked coach in the ACC. At number 13, we go to a guy that in 2018 went 10-3 at a school that hasn't seen 10-3 or top 15 in the country in forever. But other than that, it's been a miserable run for Dino Babers at Syracuse. We have all the respect in the world for Dino Babers. He seems like a first-class guy, full of integrity and character. His players love him for the most part. We understand, but he's not winning games. And at Syracuse, you can win games and go to bowl games. The previous coaches there in the last 10 years have shown that you can win games. Scott Shafer, Doug Marrone, that you can win games and get to bowl games, even though it's difficult to get to players to Syracuse. So Dino Babers had the one big season in 2018. Leading up to that season, he had some hopeful signs, most notably that Friday night against Clemson at home, in which he upset the number one team in the country, and also an upset against Virginia Tech. But other than that, man, I know it's tough to win at Syracuse, but he's 5-21 in the ACC in his last 3 seasons. And he's just not getting it done. And he's had quite the stay at Syracuse in regards to tenure. And if Dino Babers notches another 4-8 type of season, I would think that he may be shown the door at Syracuse. Our number 12 coach in the league is showing signs of life, showing signs that he is turning over the roster, turning over the attitude, the environment, and the culture at Florida State, and that's Mike Norvell. But the record, pretty dismal. Took over a program that was somewhat in shambles under Willie Taggart, and they had a bad first year, 3-6. 5-7 last year could have been much better, could have been much worse. They played a lot of close games, and that's typical of a team where they stand right now in the ACC. They're getting better. And again, they were this close to going to 0-5. They took it down to the last play of the game against Syracuse. That would have been a loss to take them to 0-5, and that could have been the death knell for Mike Norvell. But it didn't come off the rails. He held it together. They finished 5-7. They wanted to get to a bowl game, of course. Didn't quite get that accomplished as they lost to Florida. But they've had a pretty solid offseason aside from the Travis Hunter issue. And that's out of their control. He moved on to Jackson State, of course. The number one player in the country decided to go elsewhere. But Mike Norvell right now, in year 3, this is a huge year for him. Get to a bowl game, get to 6 or 7 wins, take that next step. Norvell at number 12. Our 11th ranked coach in the ACC, and again, he hasn't coached a football game as a head coach. So why do I rank him 11th? Because the guys under him have not done a commendable job to date. Tony Elliott was with Dabo Sweeney since 2011 on that coaching staff, served as offensive coordinator since 2015, so he did a pretty darn good job, obviously based on the results at Clemson. He was the primary recruiter and play caller, and the results are what they are. Now we will wait and see about Tony Elliott and taking over for one of the more respected coaches in college football, Bronco Mendenhall at Virginia. Difficult place to sign players because of the academic requirements. That has been the claim in the past. Tony Elliott at Virginia is at number 11. Our 10th ranked coach in the conference comes from Texas A&M, on to take over the head coaching job at Duke, and that's Mike Elko. He built and improved the defense at Wake Forest. He built a top 20 defense at Texas A&M. David Cutcliffe, of course, had a pretty commendable tenure at Duke. He took over an awful program. It took him 5 or 6 years to bring it up to 8-4 type status. He took Duke to an ACC championship game in 2013, and then it's faltered here in the last 3 or 4 years. So at this point, Mike Elko takes over what might be the worst football team in the conference, and we'll see what he has. He brings new life, new energy, a new direction, new approach to Duke. Mike Elko is our 10th ranked coach in the ACC based on no experience, but a fine resume as a defensive coordinator. Now he's got the Duke job. All right, at number 9, we go to Virginia Tech and Brent Pry taking over for Justin Fuente. Brent Pry at Penn State did an outstanding job as defensive coordinator. Penn State consistently, during the time that he was there, was up near the top of the list in sacks, havoc plays, yards per play, negative plays, all those type of statistics and metrics. Brent Pry would like to bring to Blacksburg and reinstate that Hokie defense as a force, the type of force that it used to be under Bud Foster. He seems to be a great fit at Virginia Tech. He's got ties to Virginia Tech. He recruited much of that territory when he was at Penn State and accomplished a great body of work as a recruiter at Penn State and D coordinator. So Brent Pry is currently our 9th ranked coach in the ACC without, again, ever coaching a game in the ACC. But this is where we stand with underachieving coaches in the conference. All right, now let's take on the rest of the field that all involves coaches that we're familiar with and their track records in the conference. Number 8, Scott Satterfield of Louisville. All right, well, Scott Satterfield took over for Bobby Petrino, so it could be nothing but up at that point. Petrino did a decent job early, then, of course, came off the rails as he did at Arkansas. Scott Satterfield took over and turned 2-10 into 8-5 with a bowl victory. But since then, it's been a rough ride at Louisville. He's known for offense. He's delivered a decent offense, but too many mistakes and too many turnovers and an awful defensive showing on that side of the ball. And Scott Satterfield is now 10-14 in his past 2 seasons at Louisville and needs to turn it around. Our 8th ranked coach in the ACC, Scott Satterfield, Cardinals. At number 7, we go to Boston College, and a interesting opportunity for Geoff Hafley to show what he can do after 2 marginal seasons since leaving Ohio State. He's got a big defensive reputation. Boston College said one of the big reasons and selling points on Geoff Hafley was that he was coming from a winning program and that he had much to do with that success. So he coached NFL defensive backs from 2012 through 18. So we expect Boston College to get back to the type of defensive play that they showed under Steve Addazio and Don Brown 5 or 6 years ago. He's gone 6-5 and 6-6 and lost Phil Jurkovec at quarterback for much of the 2021 season. So with a full season with his starting quarterback and a 3rd year in the program, we will see if Geoff Hafley and Boston College take off in 2022. At number 6, we've got the defending ACC Coastal Division champion and ACC champion, Pat Narduzzi and Pitt. Of course, he cut his teeth and showed his worth and got this job based on his defensive wizardry at Michigan State. And keep in mind that after Narduzzi left Michigan State, they went from being a top 5 to 10 team in the country to just a nudge over mediocrity. So he takes over at Pitt, and even though the defense has not been dominant, the pass rush has been. Typically ranks in the top 3 or 4 in the country in sacks and pressures. And he's shown successful in turning over the offense from a run-oriented unit that ran the ball more than anybody outside of service academies in the country to a run and gun, fling it all over the field with Kenny Pickett at quarterback the last few seasons. So Pat Narduzzi is shown to be flexible and do what he needs to do to win. He's 36-22 in 7 years at Pitt in the ACC. And again, he's won 2 division championships and is current ACC champion. At number 6, Pat Narduzzi, Pitt. At number 5, we go to a guy that has been much maligned, and that includes from yours truly, the voice of college football. He's had a nice 2 seasons to follow up what has been a near decade of underachievement, and that's Dave Doeren at NC State. He's basically put together a formula in which he plays a weak non-conference schedule that if it wasn't for the ACC forcing Notre Dame on NC State, they would be playing the likes of Old Dominion, VMI, East Carolina, and so forth every year, and that's it. So they typically go 2-6 or 3-5 in the conference, win the non-conference games, get to a bowl game. 38% winning percentage in the ACC over his first 8 seasons, but over the last 2 years, 8-4, 9-3. Much improvement. They beat Clemson last year. Time to win the division, Dave Doeren. Time to recruit a little bit better. He brings in top-level guys that make it to the NFL and are actually pretty prime first and second and third round picks in the NFL, but not the volume that they would need to consistently compete for division championships. He is 38-24 in his last 5 years. Dave Doeren's the 5th-ranked coach in the ACC. At number 4, Miami fans have already heralded him as a savior. Let's pump the brakes just a bit. Tremendous hire, Mario Cristobal in from Oregon. The work he did at Oregon's mighty impressive. He took over a team that was 7-6 under Willie Taggart. A good roster, not an extremely good one, but a top 4 or 5 roster in the Pac-12, and he turned it into the team, the program in the conference in just 2 to 3 years. They won a Rose Bowl. They won 3 division championships. They got to a Fiesta Bowl. They won the Pac-12 twice. And aside from 2 alarming performances against Utah this past season, one in which they lost the conference championship game by a zillion points after losing to the same Utes team just a few weeks earlier by a zillion points, you would have thought that Mario Cristobal would have been able to inspire more motivation and come up with a better game plan to counter the debacle that ensued just weeks earlier, but he was not able to avoid a second humiliating loss. That aside, he achieved at Oregon. He's bringing in the recruits like nobody's business. He salvaged the 2021 class or the 2022 class. Now he's moving on toward 2023. Mario Cristobal, and the signs are all in the right direction for Miami football going forward with Cristobal, our 4th-ranked coach in the ACC. At number 3, man, this guy is a classic. I can do more with less than anybody. Dave Clawson, Wake Forest. He took over the worst program in conference history. If you look at all the metrics, and we've released recently our all-time program rankings in the ACC, so check out that video. Wake Forest is the worst program in the conference in history. He didn't do it with recruiting necessarily, although he knows, obviously, the guys that he wants in the recruiting process. His recruiting classes have ranked over the last 5 years between 59th and 71st in the country. But still, 11-3 with the division championship this past season. You can count on Wake Forest to go 7-5 or 8-4 under Dave Clawson. After he cleaned it up initially, he built his system. He knows what he wants. He knows how to coach them up and develop them. And Dave Clawson's a tremendous, tremendous football coach, and one of those guys that would be intriguing to see him coach elite talent to see what he could do. But for right now, Dave Clawson's the 3rd-ranked coach in the ACC. At number 2, we go to a guy with a national championship. And in his 2nd stint at North Carolina, and it might be a little bit more difficult of a lift than we considered it to be a year ago, but Mack Brown is still a tremendous football coach. He achieved at North Carolina in his first stint. Check out the numbers. He took over a middling to awful program and turned it into a top 10 team his final 2 seasons at Carolina. Then he moves on to Texas, and of course, he rivals Oklahoma for Big 12 championships, wins a national championship, gets back to another national championship game, and even his last season at Texas, 9-4. I think Longhorn fans would take that right about now. He was off for 6 years, and a lot of people questioned him getting back into the game and being able to show the kind of energy and drive and being up to date with what's going on in college football right now. And he quickly turned around a North Carolina team that was 5-19 to go 7-6 with the bowl victory his first season. Last season, a disappointment, though. So many of us expected North Carolina to continue the ascent. They were ranked top 10 in the country to start the season, and it just did not work out. They still have defensive issues. They had serious offensive line issues last year. But Mack Brown knows what he's doing. He's got another top 10 recruiting class signed for 2022, and he's off and running for 2023. So despite the advanced age, Mack Brown, the second ranked coach in the ACC. And at number 1, this goes without saying, and it's the easiest selection outside of Nick Saban in the SEC to make. Dabo Swinney is the best coach in the conference. He's got critics after going 10-3 and having a team that was banged up week to week last season. Like the program is falling apart or something. No, when Clemson was on its game, and we saw it late in the season in the bowl game and against Wake Forest, this is still the team to beat and the gold standard in the conference. It's remarkable what he's done. He took over as a wide receiver coach, elevated to head coach in 2009, took him a couple years, figured out the defense by bringing in Brent Venables. After he had figured out the offense and put together a prolific offense, the recruiting's been insane outside of maybe the offensive line. And Clemson is a standard in college football. One of the top 3 to 4 programs in the country, and Dabo Swinney is the main reason why. They've given him the resources, the facilities, and the support. He has delivered, and delivered in spades. College football playoff appearances almost every year. National championships, ACC, he owned it from 2015 through the end of the previous season. Now he's ready to get it back. We shall see what 2022 and beyond holds in store, especially for critics that say Dabo Swinney is not adjusting to the era of the transfer portal. But for right now, he's by far the best coach in the conference. That's my list, with Dabo at number 1, Mack Brown at 2, Dave Clawson number 3, Mario Cristobal at 4. Got Dave Doeren of NC State at number 5. Our 6th-ranked coach in the conference, Pat Narduzzi, defending champion. Number 7, Geoff Hafley. 8 is Scott Satterfield. Brent Pry at number 9. Mike Elko at 10. Tony Elliott at 11. Our 12th-ranked coach in the conference, Mike Norvell, Florida State, followed by Dino Babers and Jeff Collins. Leave us your thoughts below on our ACC coaches rankings, and stay tuned for another video coming up very soon. In the meantime, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.